Hello there, everybody, and I hope everybody's doing well. Now, today I'm going to talk about something that's a little esoteric, if you will. Some of you may have learned about it in a psychology class or an education class. Some of you may have heard it, or maybe have heard it and forgot all about it. But most of you have probably, if you did learn about it, probably didn't have anybody who really explained how it fits you in your daily life. So that's what I want to do today, so to explain it, because it impacts all of us in some way, shape, or form, and trying to get you an idea of how you can use it to help you to set your goals or to train other people. And I mean that in the best possible way. So let me talk about the schedules of reinforcement. There are four basic schedules of reinforcement: a fixed interval and a variable interval, a fixed ratio, and a variable ratio. Let me go with the intervals first. The fixed interval is intervals relate to time. Ratio relates to incidences, number of times that something happened. So a fixed interval is something that's going to happen on a specific fixed time frame, like every 24 hours. So you could say your alarm clock might be set on a fixed interval schedule if it goes off at 6 o'clock. One of the more obvious things that we have that fits into our time frame for pretty much most people is, or at least most people who are on a salary, is a paycheck, because you'll get paid every 2 weeks or every week or whatever your interval is, whether you have a holiday, whether you have a day off, whether the day's been canceled because of weather or whatever. This comes with salary kinds of things. So you've got that fixed interval. So not everybody gets paid this way, but I'll talk about that a little bit also. So that it happens regardless of, because of based on the time. That's it, pure simple. X number of hours, days, whatever goes by, you get the reward. So let's see. Another fixed interval could be something like, let's see, studying for exams. You know that the exams are going to come at the end of the month, at the end of the term, whatever. You're not going to do anything, or a lot of students don't do anything until about 2 or 3 weeks, a week before the exam, because they know that that specific interval is occurring, so that they adjust their behavior based on that interval. So again, you know when something's going to happen, and so you adjust your behavior based on when you know that that's going to happen. So if you know somebody's coming, if you're in your own apartment and you know your parents are coming to visit, you might, and when you'll clean up the apartment before they show up, but you won't do anything before then because you know what the interval is. Okay. Variable interval is it's going to be based on time, but you don't know what the time is. So for example, this is somewhat like potty training. Well, no, that's going to be, the time will vary because you're doing it every single time it happens, but you don't know when it's going to happen. Okay? So that you've got a variety of intervals in there. So that with a child, if you're trying to teach it to go potty, it might be 3 times in an hour, it might be once in an afternoon. So you're doing it every time it happens, but the intervals between the instances are going to change. Working with a child or teenager to clean up his room. If you did it every single time he cleaned up his room, picked up his clothes, whatever it's going to be, notice I say he, it could be her, but let's just go with him. You'll do it every single time it happens, but you don't know what the intervals are going to be between those instances. It might be 3 times today. It might not be again for another 2 weeks. So the instance here is that you do it every time something happens, but the intervals between the times that you do the reinforcement is going to change. Okay, does that make sense? So that you're not sure when something's going to happen. As before I said, when a fixed interval for students studying for exams, if they're in a class in which the teacher says, okay, you're going to have 6 tests during the course, but I'm not going to tell you when they're coming. So the student is more likely to study on a regular basis, because the student doesn't know whether the test is going to be this week, next week, 2 tests in a row, whatever it's going to be, because they don't know what the interval is between one test and the next test. This is going to be difficult for teachers to do because it's going to vary with a lot of other things. But you can see that if they don't know when something's going to happen, they're more likely to prepare for it because they don't know whether it's going to be the next 30 minutes, the next 2 weeks. So, but you know that it's going to happen. You just don't know what the time frame is going to be. Okay, so those are going to be the intervals. The fixed, you know what the time frame is. The variable, you don't know what the time frame is. Okay, then we have the fixed ratio. Something's going to happen every X number of times something happens. This is, in a sense, like piecework for people who say somebody gets paid for every time they make 5 shirts, or every time a farm worker brings in 10 baskets of blueberries. So they're getting paid a certain amount, or they're getting paid when a certain amount of work is done. Okay? It doesn't matter whether they do it in the afternoon or whether it takes 2 weeks. So this is going to be, they're reinforced for the number of things that are happening. The time is not the issue. It's the number of things that are happening. Okay? Variable interval is that you're going to happen whenever certain things happen, but you don't know what the time frame is, or the X number of things are. Sorry, let me take that back. Let me give the example first. Somebody who works on commission does a variable interval because they're going to get paid for a particular item. They're going to get paid for selling something. Let's say real estate. They're going to get paid for selling a house, but they don't know anything about when that's likely to happen. So the time is not an issue in that particular case. So you could get something, you could sell 3 houses in one day, and you get, it would be great to have 3 houses. You might not get another paycheck, in a sense, for another month. So that's the number of times that something happens, and the time is not the interesting thing here. It's the number of times something happens. Does that make sense? So that when you do something and get reinforced because the number of times you're successful, when it doesn't have anything to do with the clock or the calendar, versus a ratio in which, an interval in which something's based on the time. Okay? So that if you're looking at trying to change a particular behavior, variable ratio is the hardest to change and modify. Compulsive gambling is almost impossible to, quote, cure, because this is a variable ratio, because people who are compulsive gamblers know that if they keep doing it long enough, they'll win. And they're right, because it has nothing to do with time. It might be 6 months between wins. It might be 2 years. But they know that if they keep it up, they're going to win, and they will win again, just because of probability, unless you've got something set up that they'll never win anything ever again, which is really difficult to do. But if they're, say, like betting on horses or something like that, sooner or later they will win. So because they know that sooner or later it's going to happen, they'll keep doing it. Now, a teen who knows it's, if normally you will say, pay them because they clean their room, and they know that sooner or later you're going to forget about it and you're not going to do anything about it, it's not going to bother cleaning the room, because they know that sooner or later you're going to quit. So they're realizing that particular behavior. So you can't necessarily change the behavior unless you're consistent. So in a lot of times when you start to try and work with other children or work with other people and give them reinforcement for X, Y, and Z behavior, and then you don't follow through, the other person, in this case, we'll say the teen, isn't going to do anything, because the teen knows that sooner or later you'll quit. So why bother with all of that stuff in the middle? Because what they're working for is on a variable interval, and they know that sooner or later they'll get what they want because you quit. Okay? This is one reason why nagging doesn't work, because they know that sooner or later that you'll just shut up, especially if you do one of these things like, oh, I'm so upset you didn't take out the garbage, I might as well take it myself. What reason do they have to take out the garbage? Because they know if they wait long enough, all they have to do is listen to you nag, but sooner or later you'll take it out. So they won. Okay? So if you take a look at these schedules of reinforcement, do you need something that you need to be reinforced for something on a daily basis? If you're trying to lose weight, do you want to be reinforced every week? Do you need to be reinforced every time you lose 5 pounds? What is it that's going to be most motivating for you? And how are you going to reward yourself? And how are you going to set it up so that it's consistent? If you want to study, what do you need to do to set up so that you study on a consistent basis instead of waiting until just the day before something's due? So that when you take a look at what your goals are and figure out, okay, this is what I want, this is the direction I want to go, what are your tendencies? Do you need to have something every time you succeed? Or do you need to have something at a certain specific time because you're working at it? So for some of you and for some goals, you might need a bit of reinforcement during a week if you're working, maybe studying. Let's use study. You may not necessarily get to the point you've finished your paper or you've gotten an A in the class. You need to reinforce yourself for being dutiful at studying for that particular week. and you have to like check off, that you studied every day for 5 days or whatever it is. You're not looking for a specific grade. You're just looking for the amount of the time that you put into the studying. Whereas if you're looking for a grade, on the other hand, and it doesn't matter whether or not you worked every day for the last 3 months, whether it just matters whether or not you got the grade, then you're looking at a variable interval because the time doesn't matter whatsoever. So each of you is going to have your different emphasis, and that might even be a different emphasis on different things. In some cases, you might want time. In some cases, you might want the activity to happen. But if you think in terms of what's going to work out best for you, or what's working out best for you when you're trying to train somebody else, let's say, helping an adolescent clean up his room, helping a child get potty trained, going with potty trained, you're probably going to want to give positive reinforcement every time the child does what you want it to do. Then you spread it out and go at variable intervals so that you're not doing it every time, but the child knows that the reward's going to come like every third. You know that it's going to be every third. The child might figure that out, but you know that it's going to come kind of like on an average. And then sooner or later, you kind of like peter it out when the child is basically, the potty training's conquered. So depending on what you're trying to do, you're going to change this as the circumstances happen. Okay, I hope that was helpful. I hope that made sense. If I confused you, ask me some questions, because this really, it's kind of confusing to learn in the first place because you don't see a lot of examples, but once you get it, it makes sense and you can start seeing when they fit your life and how certain circumstances fit. So do ask me questions if it gets confusing or some such thing like that, and let me know, or I'll do it again sometime. So again, just let me know and tell me about it. So hopefully this helps you. Hopefully you might want to pass it on to somebody else, and we will chat with you later. Bye.